Hello everybody, this is Stuart Thomas. I'm a trustee from the Retford Cycling and Walking Campaign. Today we're just going to go over the Greater Green Retford Walking and Cycling Audit commissioned by Bassetlaw District Council and carried out by WYG. It's a contemporary assessment of the state of as the title says, the walking and cycling audit. So last year, the local Bassetlaw plan was released, and we responded quite exhaustively, and very supportive on more detail for cycling and walking infrastructure. That's out in the public domain, and we've published that on our websites, and explained what we're interested in and why, and how that relates to the beneficiaries. And so this is an objective, authoritative piece of work. It's a technical note, so engineers, planners, all the professionals at the councils and third parties have a common reference to work off. We, Retford Cycling Campaign, did work briefly with the council to encourage them to use LTN 120, which had only just come out in July last year, and they did embrace that, which is good, because it's a common standard of reference for new cycling and walking infrastructure based on experience from around the country and Europe over the past 20 years. So why reinvent the wheel? Anyway, that's a separate document to this, but the way in which they measure and grade walking and cycling infrastructure, they use a couple of standards, and that's detailed in here. So, Greater Green, the Retford Walking Cycling Audit. So it consists of a fairly standard document, really. You've got the background explaining then the government guidance and local policy for both cycling and walking, explain the Nottinghamshire cycle strategy. So it's really important to remember that it's Nottinghamshire County Council that's responsible for highways, but Bassetlaw District Council do have influence over that. Also the rights of way management plan, and they use the pedestrian comfort guide for London. Now, the important thing is it doesn't matter where in the country you are as to whether or not something's useful locally. People are people, cycles are cycles, cars are cars, horses are horses, etc. And in fact, you're going to get more detail and more choice as to how to set up your infrastructure if it does come from somewhere, i.e. the standards come from somewhere where there's been lots and lots of experience. And so that therefore allows you to look at the best spend and what will fit in different types of infrastructure. Anyway, so then we go for the methodology, and the cycle network in Retford, the walking network in Retford, and the key findings, recommendations. Now, this doesn't cover all areas. I personally think this is an excellent piece of work. It does miss out on more local knowledge of areas that we highlighted in from you the beneficiaries in the surveys that we publish and use to guide our work. But it is a very good start. It's a good document for Retford to say, look, this is what we need to do, this is where we need to get from. And so, yeah, that's just a little opinion piece from me. Again, you can read this yourself, but I just want to give you a quick review of it. Basically, we could be as good as York or Cambridge, is the auditor's, the engineer's response. And that's a wonderful thing for our town that we could be compared to such prestigious places, and the Bassetlaw district is about the same population as Cambridge, so that tells you what the possibilities that we have for our area if we want to embrace them. So it goes over the government guidance and the local policy. So these are the political, financial, legal levers, if you like, that help make a difference to change infrastructure. So in the past, there's been very little input from Retfordians, if you like, for want of a better phrase. the campaign was set up to make that difference, and it is making a difference. We have £250,000 spent on Randall Way, which we didn't choose but we do support, and it makes sense as to why it would be out there because of the need for cycling infrastructure on that side of town, with 400 houses or so, or less, slightly less, being built on the North Road estates, so the Trinity Farm estate and the Trinity Fields side, and it will help kids get to school, etc. Anyway, I'm not going to go into that. I'll explain that elsewhere. So it's really good. It goes over the 5 principles of designing coherent, direct, safe, comfortable, attractive routes. So these are kind of internationally recognised ways of measuring what's needed and what the benefits are of cycle routes. So it's like it's kind of like an elastic approach to any town, village or city. So it's well worth looking at this and maybe doing your own audit as well for the villages and how to connect up to the town. So the local transport note, LTN 120. So this is an amazing, brilliant document. It spells out what needs to be done. It's being used everywhere around the country, mostly with success, in some cases less success, but then that's for various reasons I'm not going to go into. Network planning. So again, it just explains, it's the bureaucracy of it all, but it's important to understand if you want to influence and change and assess what's wrong. So there we have different speed limits and what infrastructure should be in place, and this is all about encouraging people to cycle as well. So it's about people who haven't cycled before, getting them onto cycling and walking. It's about those that are experienced and those in the middle, and of all ages, life stages and abilities as well. So this shows basically what infrastructure is needed, fully curbed cycle track to mixed traffic, and how unpleasant or pleasant that is. There's lots of other things as well, lots of statistics, very important, but you might just want to skim over it. And what they've done is, because this is an assessment of a town, WIG have simplified the assessment, but they haven't weakened it. They've just made it more relevant with their expertise to towns, basically. So this is kind of the foundation that leads to their analysis and then the findings. So you've got explains the National Cycle Strategy Delivery Plan. Again, we need to get into this. This is something that is the Retford town itself needs to have an input and a voice onto these committees and meetings. Otherwise, these people are miles away, 50 miles away. Most of them haven't been to Retford. For example, we wrote to the police commissioner, the previous one, Paddy Tipping, was really friendly, really supportive, provided some really nice supportive words that were very helpful in encouraging others to come along on the journey, whilst the new police commissioner, completely the opposite, not as friendly and as approachable, and seems to be uninterested in cycling and walking infrastructure, even with regards to safety to women that we raised. The police commissioner won't even visit Retford, because statistically we're safe, which is good, but prevention is better than cure. And rather than waiting for statistics to happen, it would be good, because lots of women and young girls have raised issues with us that we pass on immediately to the council. Usually they're not immediate life-threatening issues, but again, this applies to walking safety. That's how part of our charitable objectives. So we've got the rights of way management plan. So this is all really important because it's so bureaucratic, and it has to be, but it is democratic. To for example, coal drops, making that a footway and a cycleway, there's a lot of work that goes off in the background, and pausing, restarting, etc. So this is why we're giving ourselves 10 years or 9 years now to try and make a difference. Anyway, so this goes on about pedestrian comfort guides. So and they base it on footfall. So again, it's just explaining the approach, the foundations, the standards. So you've got the methodology, and you've got the cycle network coverage. and I go over the audit criteria, and this is really important. So you've got the quality rating, so bear in mind these colours and these ratings, and then there's a prioritisation as well of cycle improvements. So where Bassetlaw District Council can make a difference, i.e. planning for new builds, the local plan, this is very significant, and where Nottinghamshire County Council aren't making a difference, or are making a difference, because they do a lot. They've done a lot for Retford recently, but there's more that needs to be done. From what you've told us and from our videos, etc. Anyway, so again, prioritise, primary, secondary, local, in terms of what needs to be done in terms of improvements. So there's there's quite a lot here. It makes more sense when you look at the and it's all important and very valuable. So if you're really interested, take your time. If not, then that's okay as well. So we've got this. So the way I'm recording this, I need to zoom out. So this is for the main roads and cycle links that were audited. So from the south of the town, from the west and from the east, and then around the middle as well. So this map's used and enhanced later on. So here's the cycle network in Retford and the overview. So okay, so here, this is the meat and potatoes of it really. So from the River Idle, from West Street Bridge to Morrison's, so that's Asda to Morrison's, a route that was taken, which goes through Kings Park, ironically, where cycling is forbidden, as well as swimming in the river, that nobody seems to complain about, even though it's more threatening to life than most of the sensible cyclists in the world. It's very good. I'd agree with that. It's a strange route, but it is a route, and I suppose it does transcend the middle of town, and I do use it sometimes, and it's very, very good. That doesn't mean, of course, that I cycle through the park without dismounting and walking. Very good. Babworth Road, that's shared use path. It is good. I think it is good, basically, until you get to the end of it, and then you've got the junction. So if you were to go to Columba Park, for example, which does have a cycle route, an official cycle route, but it's not for anybody who is inexperienced. You wouldn't take your kids down there, which is a shame, to get to and from there, because it's not as good a quality as it is for the car. So again, all the cycling and walking infrastructure needs to be good as quality as the car and that experience. Anyway, so you've got the cycle network in Retford, so we've got very good, and if you go to very poor, you've got the Chesterfield Canal, which actually is seasonal. It depends, because it can be hard as concrete and really good in winter, but then it can also be mushy because of all the leaf matter. It is looked after by the rangers there. They do a fantastic job. It's got a green flag, but more could be done to make it more cycle and walking friendly. And we've been in touch with the Canal and Rivers Trust, and we and they have written to all these new. Whenever there's a new building estate, a new housing estate, whatever, we ask to have money put towards the canal infrastructure, so that because it takes it's traffic free, it's good for people who are carers of children, walkers, etc., as well as cyclists. And the other thing to remember is it can be done safely for cyclists. There's the occasional buffoon, and you get them everywhere in the world, but they don't dictate the rest of everyone's transport choices. And there's loads of facts that support that. If you go to any other town, even Worksop has good cycling infrastructure on the canal, so it's ridiculous that we don't. And the money is there if you ask for it and get the politicians to focus on it. Then at Arlington, well, it's just you've got to be really quite advanced cyclist to feel and be safe on those sides. Anyway, so that's kind of the range of very good and very poor, and then it goes on to the cohesion. So that's how well does it all connect together. So this is the it's like mesh analysis, I think, or meters of network rather. So the darker the colour, the greater the density of cycling networks. Obviously, most of this is on road, and most of this is not segregated, but it's the infrastructure is to share, believe it or not. So then we go on about directness of routes. So these are all really important. These words are not just meaningless. And I know most of you get that, but it's actually really important. This is all based on what's worked elsewhere. So they know that the more uptake of cycling happens through the life stages and ages if the infrastructure is there. So most kids, life stages, school, courage to cycle, then go to university, that's it. Mortgage and a car, brainwashed into the usual mumbo jumbo. And then they don't go back to cycling because the quality of the infrastructure isn't as good as the car. And the car's great, obviously, not anti-car. It's needed between longer journeys and things like that. But why for 5-minute journeys in the middle of the town? All the pollution, damage, injuries. It's a waste of effort, time, money, and impact on life. But especially now with, I'm just pontificating, but there's a lot of facts to support my view. Anyway, so that's directness, delay, and safety at junctions. So this is important because if you've got to stop and start on the push bike, there's a lot more energy than just pushing up and down on a pedal, an accelerator on the car. So so there's some accommodation, which is good, but then frequent delays, still nearly 20% of the infrastructure. And then the delays on links, and again I'm not going to go into too much detail, but it's all here for you to read and enjoy. So lack of infrastructure, again some great photos there. The ridiculous here, for example, on North Road, it's like cyclists have to give way. I mean, this is all going to change, it has to change anyway under the new highway code and the new design standards. So these give way markings will be pulled back before pedestrian and cycling routes. So those that cause the most harm, trucks, cars, etc., give way to the more vulnerable. Cyclists give way to walkers, cars give way to cyclists, etc. And again, there's this answer. It's so negative. Dismounting, mounting. It should just flow, and because it encourages people to cycle, it makes it easy. And then you've got these joining these different connecting routes hindered by old infrastructure. And you see this for pedestrians and for mobility scooter users as well, where you've got these old barriers that just are meant to stop motorbikes or whatever, but are actually more harmful because they prevent the majority of people that need access not being able to use it. So it just forces people into the motor car. And again, it's just this car mentality everywhere, which is changing slowly but surely, but we have to keep on top of it. So they go on about the comfort, really. The gradient is quite flat, obviously, around Retford. So again, safety is really important, and it's pretty bad. It's the perception of safety as well. So your standard responsibility, the statistics show. So when you raise issues around safety, it's much more wider and three-dimensional than any tragic injuries and deaths, of course. It's about making it feel safe as well as being safe, so that people are encouraged to cycle because it's good for people's health, physical and mental, of all ages and abilities. So it goes on about segregation and the speed of traffic. So it's the speed of traffic is about the noise when you're cycling, and as well as the danger, feeling of safety, and the actual risk of collision, etc. So they say that data is not available in the volume of traffic, etc. But we have access to Strava Metro, which is the statistical analysis of those people that use the app. Now, it is significant information that is very useful because of the age ranges, and over the years you get some great analysis of people who walk and cycle of all ages. Now it's not a hobbyist tool that some people have said. It's a really important statistically useful set of data that is constantly there, kind of crowdsourced, if you like. Now, like all statistics, you've got to be some healthy scepticism, but it still demonstrates that people walk through the King's Park, for example, at 9 o'clock at night who are female, who are age 13. So why are there no lights in the park? Just little simple things. Because it attracts crime. Well, does it really? I think people feel safer with lit routes. So there's this kind of lack of appetite for change, which we're always going up against, and some rather weak, unsubstantiated arguments as to why things shouldn't change. But again, that's just my view from my perspective of the world, as well as listening to the beneficiaries. And not everyone agrees, which is fine. That's democracy. Then we've got the volume of traffic. So this is the map of injuries around the town. So that's quite awful, isn't it? But these things happen. So it just explains some of the areas, the hot spots, really the main roads in and out of town, and around Aldsall as well. Yeah, so then we go on about comfort and surface quality and signage. So yeah, there's the quality of surfacing for roads is great, but there's no space for cycles mostly. So this is a problem, and it's not true, because it depends on who you are, where you live, and what route you take. But the North Road, for example, needs massive improvement. It's pothole city, and it's really uncomfortable cycling. Especially if you've just got a normal mid-range bike. You shouldn't need a full suspension mountain bike to cycle down a cycle route on the road. But again, I suppose we're just seen as a backwater sometimes, and we raise these issues and complaints. Sometimes stuff gets done, sometimes it doesn't. Again, it's down. We've got an MP that is based in Retford, and we do write to him. We've got no visibility of what he does, but we have seen some really important things happen, which obviously the Randall Way side, but we could do more for the rest of town. And then it goes on about signage again, which is really important and is changing. I mean, we've asked for signs in supermarkets, so Lidl have put them up, thankfully. It took a year to get that done, and the Co-op have put some in thanks to encouragement from Bassetlaw Council. Excellent planning team. So yeah, God, this is really rambling, isn't it? I don't know. Anyway, if anybody's still listening, so it goes into some great detail. It shows you really good examples. Really gets you thinking about, well, why can't this improve? Because the canal has all these new housing estates next to it, and this could be resurfaced, and it could be complement, not tarmac, but all the modern materials. You can even make it look whatever colour you want, so it complements the environment. So it's great all year round for people on foot and on cycles, and people with mobility scooters, as well as carers with wheelchairs and buggies. And then we've got this, this old red brick type infrastructure. That why, how does that? People that make these decisions, often it's called externality. They don't suffer their decision. So if you walk down there every day or cycle down there every day, you wouldn't choose that. You'd have some proper modern infrastructure, and some of the legacy millennium infrastructure. So this is on North Road, where Randall Way will be. Is rather. Yep. So then there's attractiveness again. If it doesn't look good, why are people going to use it? That matters, and it goes through the lighting provision. and then an isolation cycle network. So it's really good. So it's good. Is it really comprehensive? It's mostly there. So this map is showing the quality of the routes there. So you've got very poor in red and very good in green. So not brilliant, but that's the good thing about having somebody independent who's not from the town. So the pros of that are that they come with fresh eyes and all their experience and professionalism, but the downside is, for example, they'll miss out on things. But I suppose you've only got so much time and they've only got so much money budget for this. But again, it's a really good report. But if we zoom in and look at the places, so if you think about getting to the train station as well, and of course this report is mainly biased towards the new housing estates that are being built, because that justifies, they need to understand how good the infrastructure is so they know where to spend the money. So obviously up here, access to Ida Valley and this new estate, all of this, and the villages as well, could be improved, because there is just basically a tarmac path covered in grass that could be widened for both cycle and pedestrians. There's lots of people who walk and cycle, and then you wouldn't have to be on this A638, which is very intimidating. But if we go down to where the train station is, so here we can see Westfield Road hasn't been included. So you've got so you have Queen Street, Station Road, but you can't. There's always parking both sides because of the residence situation. But Westfield Road down here, all of that, as you know, could be re-tarmacked and be an excellent route. I mean, it's a bridleway at the moment, but because of a lack of clarity on whether it's owned by Network Rail or the residents, nobody wants to do anything about it really, which is really sad because it's a really good route for getting across from different town on foot, but you won't go down there because it's too dangerous. The potholes, have you seen the videos that we've made? It's very unpleasant environment for walking or cycling. So they missed out on that, which is a shame because it's a big transport hub. The railway station with 500,000 people coming in and out before the pandemic every year. We've got also there's the coal drops joining at the town, that could have been added or assessed, because you have to go all the way around to get to the station. It's ridiculous when you could just go straight across, and that could improve that area a lot, and especially improve access to public transport. There are some shortcuts via foot, but again, as much as they're good enough quality, they weren't reviewed or audited. So again, we work on that through different aspects. So anyway, again, this is not detailed analysis, although it might feel like it after this video's ended, if anybody's still listening. But there we go. So we've got the on and off road provision, and so these barriers are barriers to movement and barriers to improvement. Getting a wheelchair and a buggy or a bike through there, it's just off-putting. And again, you just abandoned cycling infrastructure, just stops. Why? You just abandoned, and that doesn't encourage a good perception of cycling as a valid means of transport, which it is. It's not a niche activity, it's a valid means of transport. And again, so we've got this infrastructure. Actually, these are two-way. Go up there both ways. If you look at the legislation, it says it's two-way. And again, all the potholes and things. But this is going towards a main school. It should be maintained and looked after. Children are important, especially down Holcroft, and they are making efforts. But I suppose it's just those that speak the loudest and those who have the purse strings, etc. So we've got the walking network in Retford, and it just goes through the comfort of that, attractiveness, directness and safety, number of injuries. and coherence. And again, read that at your leisure. So this is about pedestrian casualties and fatalities. And that's just useful for making improvements around safety and arguments for improvements around safety as well. So depending which part of town you are, this might be quite useful for you, because we can't do everything. There's only 3 of us as trustees. And then there's a provision of walking, cycling as well. Walking. There's not a lot of green around there. Well, I suppose it's good, as you'd expect, for tarmac footpaths. And that's also with regards to getting to the new estates as well. So then we've got, it isn't attractive. It's just, why do you have to walk all the way around there just to get over there? It should just be direct. It puts people off. It's just unpleasant. I suppose this is anti-collision thinking in a sense, but again, why make it so difficult? And then you've got issues around bins, footway parking, and this is a bugbear of mine. If you've got, I've got 3 kids, and it's a nightmare when you're trying to walk with pushchairs or shopping, etc. And people think they're helping. They're not. It's illegal. Cars are not meant to be on the pavement. Other drivers can get round you. I suppose people are worried about the wing mirrors and things like that, but it's just a really bad habit, and it doesn't help. It's just because you've got to go into the road when there's a good pavement there. If you've got a wheelchair or a mobility scooter. So there's some good residential streets that could be used, rerouted, etc. Doesn't talk about Carrowgate, of course, the bugbear of many people. But if you don't provide alternative routes or infrastructure, then you will always have teenagers cycling down there, because it's the path of least resistance to get across town. I'm not saying it's right, but every year there's a group of teenagers, and it will never go away unless you improve things. And moaning about it doesn't solve anything. Punishing people doesn't solve anything. You've just got to make it easy for people to get through, and many of the towns around the country have achieved that, as we've shared in the past. You just need the money, the infrastructure, and the political will to do it, and of course that takes time. Anyway, so it provides those key findings and recommendations, and a prioritised approach for the cycling infrastructure here. So again, they've got very poor ratings, so they suggest this is improved on that side of things. And then it goes into recommendations for the local plan. So again, our view on any of these, we're neutral as to whether or not these housing estates happen. We're neutral, but if they do happen, then we lobby and have lobbied and write reports on what we believe, based on what happens elsewhere, not just making things up. That the infrastructure needs to be there for walking and cycling, etc. And there is space on brand new estates. I think one other organisation made some rather interesting, challengeable, arguable comments, saying there isn't enough space for cyclists, and it's just, well, people on bikes, yes there is. You just build the paths wider, as they have done in the North Estates. When you get in the planning, you can make those differences and changes. Anyway. So the recommendations, and the other thing is reducing the need to travel, so build more shops and infrastructure locally to these new housing estates, which makes sense. I don't necessarily agree with it, but anyway, so we've got these, and it makes sense, doesn't it, really? It'd be good to have pharmacies, shops, affordable shops, more local to the new estates, and hospital, doctor surgeries, dentists, etc. Anyway, so it goes on the costs there, and that's pretty much it, really. So it's good. It's good. It's not, nothing's ever perfect, is it? but it's well worth having a good read through it for your area of the town, if nowhere else, just so that you're armed with facts and information on how to lobby and improve your part of town for walking and cycling. So yeah, that's it really. I hope you found it useful. It's a bit of a long monologue, but again, you might like the audiobook version of Greater Green. But no, it's really good. It doesn't cover everything, but it covers most things, most issues and concerns. And it's really, really good at drawing out the new standards and expectations, and also how much needs to be done in our town. That if you drive everywhere, we probably don't care. But by making roads wider or adding more traffic, that is not improving anything. You need to have these alternatives of walking and cycling that have to be as good as the experience of the car. Otherwise, people won't choose the alternatives to the car. Obviously, cycling's quite weather dependent. I mean, I've been cycling all my life, so I don't really notice the weather. It doesn't rain as often as you think it does. You get used to wearing waterproofs when you need them, maybe 4 or 5 times a year that I have to put them on, if that. And I'm out pretty much every day. But again, the better the infrastructure, then you're not having to clean your bike because it's too muddy, etc, etc. But anyway, thanks for listening, and I hope you found this useful. As I said, we think this is a really useful report, even though it doesn't cover all the concerns and issues raised by beneficiaries. But then it is independent, it is objective, and it's a technical note, so it can be used by either Bassetlaw or Nottingham County Council or whomever as an authoritative independent source for improving infrastructure. Thanks a lot. Bye for now.